Macon County's rural transit buses pick up about 1,000 citizens at their homes, take them to stores in town, and return them home every day. 22 other Alabama counties provide the same public service. But the $2 million federal funding the state received 4 years ago to pay for the transportation is on its last wheel. The last of it will be spent at the end of September. Today, several county commissioners and community action representatives who are using the rural transportation service or who want to provide it got some bad news from the federal government. If the federal cutbacks haven't hit rural America yet, they will soon. That according to Federal Highway Administrator Shelton Strickland, who told them not to look to the government for future assistance, but instead to turn to their elected officials to help them secure public subsidies for rural transportation. Officials also expect to go to the private sector for help.
There's still going to be money available from the federal government to buy vehicles, but operating the vehicles is going to be the problem, right? And we're looking for private assistance for that. And over in Tallapoosa County, it's a good example where the Russell Foundation is providing them with their local match. So these are the kind of things we're going to be advising people to look toward in the future.
The two-day workshop continues tomorrow. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Federal investigators are looking at credit union records here and are checking to see if loans were properly granted, repaid, and whether any credit union members were granted illegal favors involving loans. Several credit union members and ASU officials who asked not to be identified say union members have long had problems getting loans after loan committees approved them. 3 union members told me that they would have loans approved but would frequently receive half of the loan, and several months later the other part would be available. Other areas under investigation by the FBI include allegations that some credit union members were refused an accounting of loan balances and records of how many shares they had in the union. Several say when they attempted to withdraw their withholdings from the union, they were refused. Another area under scrutiny by the Justice Department is complaints that after some loans were approved by the loan committee, it took as long as 2 months before the money was to become available. One union member told me that they are still waiting for the remainder of an $1,800 loan approved in July. $900 of that loan remains to be paid. The FBI's investigation has just begun, and it could be months before it's completed. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
Things are going real well. We're pretty much up to date. We've gotten all the notices out. We've gotten all the cards out. The last batch is going out today.
And it's taken no small effort on the part of Chairman Lois Jenkins and the Board of Registrars to prepare Montgomery County for this year's September 7th primary. Voter registration seems to have picked up from previous years. The staff handled almost as many new voters in June as they did in the 3 months before the 1978 gubernatorial primary.
Voting over here.
Add reapportionment to that, and you have one administrative headache.
So we're having to notify all voters of which precinct they're in and also where they will be voting, because about 24 of the polling places have changed with reapportionment also.
Mailing those notices to more than 114,000 registered voters cost the taxpayers about $15,000. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
The children of Abdullah Del Rashid did not go to school today. Mr. Rashid is a Muslim, and he doesn't want his children corrupted by Christian influences in local schools.
Because of the thing that occurred in the public school, and my religion forbid me to send my child to a public school.
Go ahead.
I kept not to teach myself. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us to teach our children from the age of 3 and to teach them at home if we don't have a University of Islam in our neighborhood.
What he does want is the right to teach his children at home, so he's filed a suit in opposition to the state school attendance law. But he says the suit is really more of a protest.
I don't see why I can win because I'm dealing in a system that's controlling the courts and everything, so I don't see why I can win. But I just have to fight this thing because it's corrupting my children, send them to public school.
2 years
So
ago,
I'm
Mr.
real- I'm
Rashid
just
and his
fighting
wife
it 'cause
defied
after
the law and kept their
1980,
children
April
home.
1980,
But when
told
they
them-
thought they might be sent to jail and lose the children, they gave in and sent them to a public school. This year, the Rashids say they'll send the children to a Muslim school they found, but it will cost $150 a month, and they can't afford that for very long. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
The state has spent nearly all the $2 million the federal government allocated 4 years ago, but county commissioners and community action leaders have been told not to count on the federal government for more funding. Chief Federal Highway Administrator Shelton Strickland says the government will continue to provide capital assistance for construction needs, but not operating resources to purchase vans or buses. However, state officials aren't worried yet.
What we're encouraging all the agencies to do is to work together at the local level to pool their resources more or less and to look at getting more local involvement like the business mergers, these kind of things, to kind of tie them over in the absence of operating assistance.
The workshop continues tomorrow. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
The U.S. team arrived without one of the top female swimmers in the country. The team still has some big names, especially among the 18 men on the squad. Steve Lundquist recently broke the world record in the 100-meter breaststroke, and Auburn's Rowdy Gaines is the world's best in the 100 and 200-meter freestyle. Rowdy thinks the competition in this meet will come more from his own team than from the Russians.
I'll probably have my main competition in all my events from the United States instead of Russia, which I hope I'd rather have. I guess I'd rather have my fellow Americans beat me than the Russians.
The Soviets do have some fine swimmers, though, their best being Vladimir Solnikov, record holder in 3 freestyle events. This dual meet, along with the Pan Am Games next summer, are the 2 biggest preliminaries before the 1984 Summer Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Possibly in an effort to show the American team what Olympic competition is all about, John Neighbor, 4-time gold medal winner in Montreal in 1976, is working with the U.S. team. His inspiration and a fairly fast pool could mean some very good times during the 3-day meet.
Here from Atlanta, Georgia, Morehouse College, and we have another local. We will have a new in Montgomery. This film covers about 5 different segments. Here's some of the New Orleans. The focus is really on the Freedom Ride.
The 3 commissioners will begin serving their term December 1st. Judge Bonner agreed to let Commissioners Ellis and Jordan finish harvesting their farm crops. He told all 3 men they won't be home for Christmas. Judge Bonner fined Crawford and Ellis $7,750. Jordan must pay a $1,000 fine. The convictions also mean Commissioners Ellis and Crawford must give up their elected offices. Judge Bonner told them they have violated the trust of the people and did not draw a salary from the county. After the sentencing, their attorneys had no comment and did not indicate if they plan to appeal. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News at the Federal Courthouse.
I'm going to be far too. That's good.
It's like an office complex.
It is. It's built, it's designed pods. And we're real proud to have all of you here to celebrate this occasion with us. And it's a pleasure to be chairman of the board and to see this intensive treatment unit built, able to bring it back to square one to start over and head for this and so. Yes, sir. Yeah, really. I sure. I'd like to invite all of our guests.
Mr. Creel told reporters he's informed Isabel Thomason legal action has been initiated against her for libel and slander.
Well, this is it.
He says Ms. Thomason has made libelous and slanderous charges about him in her press releases, newspaper statements, and radio advertising.
I categorically deny the charges and accusations made by my opponent during this campaign.
When asked what the statements were,
straight,
Creel declined to
we
comment,
have
saying details would be forthcoming. Creel's attorney, Kenneth Cooper, says they object to statements made by Mrs. Thomason indicating Creel was convicted of fraud and that he's, quote, shaking down, unquote, campaign contributions from junior college and technical school presidents. Cooper also wrote to newspaper, radio, and television stations telling them, quote, not to run any further political advertising for Mrs. Thomason, which in any manner may be considered slander or libel against Mr. Creel, unquote. This appears to conflict with federal law that prohibits broadcasters from exercising any censorship over material contained in political advertisements. Mrs. Thomason says she's studying Creel's demands. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Believe it or not, National Safety Council statisticians project that 1 out of every 2 Americans will, at some time during their lifetime, be the unwitting victim of a drunk driver. These statisticians aren't predicting whether you'll be killed, nor whether you'll be burned.
You made contact with second squad.
Last year alone, that many people were killed in traffic accidents in the U.S. Fine says that half of the fatal accidents are alcohol-related, and 450 people in Alabama died in accidents involving drunk drivers last year. Fine says MAD was started 2 years ago by a California woman whose daughter was killed by a drunk driver. The organization has now grown to 89 chapters in 29 states. Fine says MAD is not against drinking, but against those who drink and drive. She says the stiffer penalty...
We are dismayed and frankly we are astounded that a few of our elected officials effectively killed a bill calling for increasing the minimum. Approximately 150 people lost their lives. It was, and I'll admit, a terrible, horrible accident. That of the more than 25,000 alcohol-related traffic deaths last year in the U.S., almost 4,000 occurred in the 16 to 19-year age group. Did you know that death and injury resulting from alcohol-related crashes is the #1 teenage health problem? And did you know that states which have raised the minimum age have experienced reductions in the death rate ranging from...
There'll be no part of zero order. In my opinion, when you make such a statement as that, what I'd like to do today is, I guess, kind of set the record straight concerning the Public Service Commission race, place #1. There are only 2 candidates in this race. Myself, Lynn Greer. He paid them the $30. He's still in business. Problems that they have in the TVA area, we don't want in Alabama Power Territory. Let me give you a good example. If you don't have a job, you won't be able to pay that $10. You can look in Sheffield, Alabama. We have disputes over consumers' bills. Today, the Public Service Commissioner, 3 commissioners, we serve as an arbitration board on disputes. Usually one of us can solve a problem. And I'd like to say, since I've been on the commission, I have not asked any utility to help in any way that they have failed to do it. They just haven't. Let
me get there you go. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Are we rolling, Thomas? Okay. You say that you had seen Arthur Bremer before the day in Laurel.
As a matter of fact, I saw Arthur Bremer at Hagerstown, Maryland, maybe 2 weeks before this actually took place. And the only reason that I remember Bremer was that he applauded longer and louder and harder and stomped his feet more, and apparently trying to be one of the crowd, but he made himself obvious by being too vociferous and too loud.
He dressed in the Wallace garb and
wore the Wallace hat at times and the Wallace button. You would
and we have three students from Louisville, Kentucky, the History of the Civil Rights Movement. We also have, to do this morning is to review the film presentation of here. We also have Johnny Carr. Let's step down.
Attorneys, any comments?
You plan on appeal?
Mr. Watkins, do you plan to appeal? I think it is, yes. That's it.
Building to come out of the ground on the oil lease money. And
Start digging.
down on it there. I've been a few fucks over
Creel has given his opponent, Isabel Thomason, 5 days in which to publicly retract statements he says she's made in press conferences, news releases, and in radio advertisements. Creel informed Mrs. Thomason of the demands in a letter delivered to her yesterday. That letter didn't detail the specific statements, but Creel's attorney, Kenneth Cooper, says they object to Mrs. Thomason saying Creel was convicted of fraud and that he's, quote, shaking down, unquote, junior college and technical school presidents for campaign money. Cooper wrote to newspapers, radio, and television stations notifying them of the legal action and advising them not to run any further political ads for Mrs. Thomason that may be considered libel or slander against Creel. Federal law prohibits broadcasters from exercising any censorship over material contained in political advertisements. Mrs. Thomason says she doesn't anticipate making any retraction. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
When toxic shock syndrome killed a few unfortunate women a couple of years ago, the adverse publicity mobilized numerous government agencies and destroyed a product marketed by a corporate giant responsible for the killing and the injury. We are dismayed and frankly we are astounded that a few of our elected officials effectively killed a bill calling for increasing the minimum drinking age. Killed and injured.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? That male mentally incompetent to them.
450 of those victims died on Alabama highways. And your chances of being the victim of a drunk driver are 1 in 2. That's what the president of the Jefferson County chapter of MAD, Dee Fine, told those who attended today's meeting. Alabama's first and only MAD chapter so far is dedicated to the cause of informing the public about the threat drunk drivers pose to the safety and health of innocent people. Fine says MAD also provides support to family members who have had loved ones killed or maimed by intoxicated drivers.
In fatal traffic crashes involving alcohol were under the age of 21.
Fine also says she's disappointed.
We are dismayed and frankly we are astounded that a few of our elected officials effectively killed a bill calling for increasing the minimum drinking age. We cannot understand how, in good conscience, these legislators could fail to bring to a vote and pass a bill that would, with 100% certainty, save countless young people from an untimely and horrible death on our highways.
Fine says that injuries and deaths from alcohol-related accidents is the #1 health problem among teenagers.
Fox syndrome killed a few unfortunate women a couple of years ago. The adverse publicity mobilized numerous government agencies and destroyed a product described as Alabama the Beautiful. We had the equivalent of 3 Pan American crashes, each and every one caused by the drunk driver, and not
Alabama.
Last year's disappointing and controversial 1-8 season is just that. Last year and hopefully forgotten. Coach Bo Boswell has weathered the storm of some disgruntled parents and players to field the 1982 squad he says will be much better.
These kids have worked extremely hard all summer long in our weight program. They've come back with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of poise, and I think our execution is much better.
Across town at Lanier, everything looks rosy going into this season. In fact, the Poets have been ranked as high as number 6 in 4A preseason polls. Coach Charles Sykes says, wait a minute, we lost 11 starters and adequate replacements have yet to be found.
This season. I feel like we got more experience on offense. Our offensive linemen are more experienced than they were last year. We got 2 or 3 kids back on defense to play last year. We still have our punter back. Our problem is our snap back there too.
The Lee Lanier robbery is one of the oldest and most storied in the state. The 27th renewal is tonight at Crampton Bowl. And both coaches expect this year's game to be no different than some of the great games of the past.
They're tough. I saw them in the spring, and they were big and quick, and they have a quarterback that throws the ball real well and gets the corner real quick. And I know they have a lot better running backs than they did last year.
Lanier has a tremendous kicking game. They have a returning offense from last year, and the defense should be adequate. And if any two of those work tomorrow night, it's going to be extremely tough for us. But we do feel like we're going to be able to move the football. Our defense is improved from last year, so it should be interesting. Come out.
The Philadelphia Phillies jumped all over Atlanta starter Pascual Perez, but it wasn't all his fault in the first inning. This double play ball booted by Rafael Ramirez cost him 2 runs, and it was 4-0 at that stage. Complemented just a few batters later by this towering triple by starting Phillies pitcher Dick Ruthven. And it's 6-0 Philadelphia after just a half inning. And then Bob Horner began his Atlanta heroics. A monster shot to deep center field in the second inning cut it to 6-1. And then came the Braves' big inning, the 4th. This time, Murphy singles home 2 runs, and it's 6-4 Philadelphia. And then Horner again, this time to left center. 2 runners aboard. It's a 3-run shot, and the Braves take an 8-6 lead. Horner's 27th home run of the year. But give the Phillies credit. Rick Mailer on in relief of Perez in the 1st. Served Gary Matthews a fastball in the 7th, and he tied the game at 9. A 3-run shot to right center field. And then in the 10th, the ex-Brave returned again. Matthews singles to right off Garber. It's 10-9 Philadelphia. 11-9 final, snapping the Braves' 6-game winning streak, dropping them a full game behind the Dodgers now in the West Division of the National League.
I can think of no better way to begin the 18th Southeastern Conference Skyriders Tour than here at Alabama with the man. The Tide is reloaded, ready, and favored to win a 10th Southeastern Conference title in the past 12 years. When talking about the conference this summer, when asked Bear Bryant's reply was, I like us. And why not? Deep and experienced in almost every position. Bear Bryant always wanted to take advantage of his talent. Drive it! Out of the wishbone bowl this year to the I formation.
Don't run out there, don't run out there.
End of the picture, including Lenny Patrick at the tailback. A star this year. Perhaps a quarterback who has pinpoint passing ability. If there's a question mark, and that's doubtful, it could be in the defensive front and in linebacker. Injuries there, several injuries could hurt teams than others. All in all, talent-wise, schedule-wise, and all points to Alabama this year. Maybe one of those years. First of 10 stops on the SEC Skyriders Tour, this is Phil Snow reporting from the University of Alabama.
Several hundred people are expected to attend a celebration in Montgomery honoring Women's Equality Day this evening. The celebration commemorates a milestone in the struggle for women's rights. Susan Silvernail is standing by at Montgomery's North Hull Historic District for this live report. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. This celebration is dedicated to the suffragettes, the women who fought so long and so hard for the right to vote around the turn of the century. About 15 women's organizations, various businesses and individuals are co-sponsoring this celebration tonight for Women's Equality Day. Henrietta McGuire is the president of the Montgomery chapter of the Women's Political Caucus. Ms. McGuire, what is the significance behind August 26th? What's so special about this date?
On August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified, and that gave women the right to vote.
Okay, and how long did it take women to win the right to vote in this country?
That fight began on a cold, stormy winter night in Seneca Falls, New York, in 1848. Where a group of 9 women got together in the home of one of them and decided that they were going to start struggling for the right to vote.
And it took about 70 years, I understand, to win that right.
70 years uphill all the way.
Thank you. And in a few minutes, Ms. McGuire is going to tell this crowd more about the history of the suffragette movement. There are plenty of political candidates here tonight. Most of the gubernatorial candidates have sent representatives. One organizer of this celebration says it's a nice way to remind the candidates that women are a political force. This is Susan Silvernail reporting live from Lucas Tavern. Back to you, Bob.
Thanks, Susan. An intensive treatment unit is...
1982 marks the 75th anniversary of military aviation. In the early stages, aerial warfare was mostly a hit-and-miss proposition during combat. Now, with jets costing in the millions of dollars, officials can't afford to take chances with equipment or the security of a nation. The computer has become an important part of the military arsenal, and during Media Day at Maxwell, reporters had a chance to see one military use for the computer. It's called wargaming, and the object is to deploy forces, destroy targets, and keep losses to a minimum. Officers who attend Maxwell's professional military schools participate in computerized war games as part of their education. War games at Maxwell could be greatly expanded in the future with the addition of the Command Readiness Exercise System. The government plans to spend more than $40 million on the complex through its first 5 years of construction and operation. Initial construction is scheduled to be completed in January of 1985. Program manager for the project, Colonel Dean Pappas, says it will be a shot in the arm.
Well, right now we have about 12 applications, wargaming applications at the area university, but we use unclassified data, for one, and our models are not flexible enough to let us simulate different areas of the world than they were planned for. We'd like to be able to respond to different crisis areas as they come up. The new system will give us that capability.
Plans call for the Maxwell system to be hooked up with other branches of professional military schools across the country. Wargaming is important to the military because it allows commanders to test a war scenario without losing men or machines.
With a wargaming capability, we want to impart a feeling of deja vu, that I have seen this before somewhere, and it's not totally new to me.
Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Ms. Blackshear says some voters will be deprived of the right to vote because of inconveniences imposed on at least 2 voting precincts in Montgomery. She stood in front of what she called one example, the Newtown Community Center, located on what is now an uprooted and closed portion of North Decatur Street, which is undergoing reconstruction.
The road's all torn up. It's in a mess. It's going to be like this. It's closed to the public until November of 1983. Now, this is some information that we've been able to get from City Hall. And it's impossible. If we get a couple of good rains, people can't get in here. All right, then over at Alabama State, the registration, the very first day of registration takes place the same day that the primary elections is to take place, September the 7th, and all parking spaces are allotted to people, and there's no public parking over there for them.
Ms. Blackshear says the blame can be in part traced back to the confusing series of legislative reapportionment plans adopted by the legislature, which in turn delayed the County Commission's ability to thoughtfully select voting locations. She now says the County Commission feels it's too late in the game to change things. That's why she says she's written the U.S. Justice Department asking for help. She says she's hoping to hear back from the department by Monday when she plans to appear before the County Commission again. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Wanting to try and correct.
Here for Chuck Williams, one of our Sexton. You other mayors, Mayor. How can black mayors who represent well over 10 million citizens in their cities and well over $3 billion in public resources and funds in our various municipal budgets, as well as transit authorities, housing authorities, port authorities, and other boards and corporations that we have some influence, how in fact can we begin to work with these national organizations and channel our resources into those organizations on an equitable basis?
Existence today, an organization that was founded by your first president of the Tuskegee Institute, Booker T. Ward, was an activity.
With a helicopter involved in the latest incident in the background, Army officials met with reporters to discuss the shootings in 2 separate South Alabama locations. Army spokesman hinted that someone upset because of the noise of the aircraft may have been responsible for firing the shots. Officers say if that's the case, there are other ways to complain. It was pointed out, should a resident have a complaint about a helicopter, it's important to record the time of the noise complaint and the large numbers painted on the tail section of the aircraft, since there may be as many as 300 aircraft flying at one time. Commanding General of the Army Aviation Center, Major General Carl McNair, says if the latest gunfire was 20 feet closer to the cabin of the aircraft, one of the crew could easily have been killed. And he had some strong words about the shooting incidents.
And to think that anyone would in fact endanger their lives by such a cruel and malicious act as to shooting a defenseless helicopter on a routine training mission is irreprehensible to me as a soldier and as a citizen.
Matt Carmack, WSFA TV News.
I have been shot at many times, and I have been shot down.
Furthermore, rights, privileges, and obligations thereunto pertaining.
Cannot be resolved. Now, it's very important that a person who wishes to make a noise complaint report the large white numbers and letter painted on the aircraft and the time of
to ensure that they get the most effective and the most quality training to in fact prepare them for the future. These young men and women have taken an oath of allegiance to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, which includes the defense of the people of South Alabama. And to think that anyone would in fact endanger their lives by such a cruel and malicious act as to shooting a defenseless helicopter on a routine training mission is irreprehensible to me as a soldier and as a citizen. And I have been shot down. I have seen a pilot shot down.
Much of last night's game was mistake played. Early in the first quarter, Lee took advantage of the first break. The Generals broke through to block a Billy Knighton punt. Freddie Thomas gets the block. He also scoops it up and dashes 33 yards for a touchdown. With a point after, Lee led it 7-0. In the second quarter, Lanier turned a Lee fumble into a score. From the 4, Arthur Stokes takes it in for the first of his 3 touchdowns on the night. A try for 2 failed. 7-6 Lee, 9:05 left in the half. The Poets drove 66 yards for the next tally. Stokes again gets the touchdown from 4 yards out. A try for 2 is again no good. 12-7 Lanier at halftime. The defenses took over in the second half after Lanier scored on their first possession. This time they drove 36 yards. Who else but Stokes? He again takes it in from the 4. A try for 1 is successful, and the Poets closed out the scoring and held on for a 19-7 win over Lee. Tonight at the Bowl, it's Carver and Jeff Davis. At JD, the perennially powerful Vols look to again be strong this season. In fact, many believe Coach Charles Lee has a better squad than the one he took to the State 4A semifinals last year. But Lee says this team is a long way from being close to their predecessors.
I hope that they'll live up to their expectations, our expectations, the expectations of other people. Right now, we're not the best ball team in the state. We're not the second best. We're not even close. We will be very fortunate to be the second best team in Montgomery right now.
At Carver, Coach Davis Brock looks to better a 2-8 campaign of a year ago. And all indications are this will be a better Wolverine team, at least offensively.
Yeah, we should be, we're going to have to outscore people. We don't have a lot coming back on defense, but we have our offensive people coming back. And this gives us the opportunity to be a little more complex offensively because they basically know everything we were doing last year, so we can expand our offense a little bit, and we feel like we're going to be real good offensively.
Anytime rivals like Carver and Jeff Davis square off, you can expect almost anything. And with this being the first game of the year, both coaches are expecting a tough battle.
Got more people coming back than what they've had. They've got probably the fastest running back in the area in Darryl Streeter. They got an outstanding quarterback in Rick Yates. You know, I think they'll throw the football a lot. I think the people that come out to see the ball game will see a wide open ball game.
They're tough always. They're very well coached. Coach Lee and his staff do an excellent job with them. They make very few mistakes because they are well coached, so you've got to go out and beat them. They're not going to beat themselves, and so we're looking at number one, keeping from beating ourselves first and then trying to go out and beat them because they're not going to give it to us.
Carver and Jeff Davis will kick it off tonight at 7:30 at Crampton Bowl. TV 12 will have the highlights for you during tonight's 10 o'clock report.
You wasn't here.
There is reason to believe that at long last this may in fact be the year of the Gator, the year of the Florida Gators. Coach Charlie Pell, beginning his 4th season, has a talent-laden team. There are 2 players at almost every position who have at one time or another started. That spells experience. Florida's schedule is tough, starting with Miami and Southern Cal, but open dates before Mississippi State and Auburn, and then before the season-ending game with Florida State should work to great advantage, particularly for those 2 dates in the conference. Charlie Pell has come a long way with the Florida program. They are now capable of winning the Southeastern Conference Championship. So Pell's job is to overcome those ghosts of the past, starting with that 1928 team that lost 13-12 to Tennessee on the last day of the season. Since that day, there have been many years of the Gator in the preseason, but never has it actually happened. Maybe this year. Stop number 3 on the SEC Skyriders Tour. Phil Snow reporting from Gainesville, Florida. It wasn't many years ago that Mississippi State was the end of the line for SEC football, a coach's graveyard. But Emory Bellard has changed all of that. He has taken State to bowls the past 2 years. That is a school record. Bellard is a coach, no doubt about that. Now the question is, can he hold the pace? A couple of game breakers have gone to the pros, Johnny Cooks to Baltimore and Glenn Collins to Cincinnati. Both high draft choices. Those kind of defenders are very hard to replace. The Bulldogs have the veteran John Bond at quarterback, a sensation as a freshman who suffered a mild sophomore slump, but he can play, no doubt about that. Bellard's offense will always be good. He's that kind of coach. The question is, can the State defense be as good as in the past? That's not likely. A mid-season stretch of 6 games may be too much for the Dogs. They play Florida, then Georgia, then Southern Miss, Miami, Auburn, and Alabama. 6 straight weeks. That'll be hard to live through. This is stop number 2 on the SEC Skyriders. Tonight we'll report on the Florida Gators. This is Phil Snow reporting from Starkville, Mississippi.
Ricky Henderson's record-tying steal came the hard way. Milwaukee pitcher Mike Caldwell tried a pickoff, but Henderson was already gone. Cecil Cooper threw down to second, but the speedster was already there. Henderson later scored on a fielder's choice, but then Milwaukee's bats got busy. Ben Ogilvie tripled to right in the second. He later scored on a Gorman Thomas single. Oakland's Dwayne Murphy homered in the third to tie the score at 2, but from there it was all Brewers. They picked up 4 runs in the bottom of the third, the big blast coming off the bat of Gorman Thomas with 2 on. Thomas did it again in the 7th, this time a 2-run shot. He ended up with 6 RBIs on the night, leading the Brewers to a 10-3 romp. Roger Brown, NBC News.
times it has
Well,
to be?
there's still discussion between the company and the union, and of course now the federal mediator. So there's still hope as long as there is discussion.
Suppose there is a strike. How will it affect Alabama Power? Are you ready for it?
Well, the nature of our business requires that we be prepared for any type of emergency situation, and we are prepared to man the system and maintain electric service to our customers if necessary, but we hope that won't be necessary.
The conference has brought together representatives of more than 50 black organizations and businesses to suggest to the mayors how they can best help the black community. The group spent much of today going over their plans, which Mayor Johnny Ford of Tuskegee says will help black mayors nationwide use their offices to direct business to black concerns.
We are very concerned about the economic challenges facing black America, and therefore we are resolved to do everything that we possibly can to strengthen black America first. Then we will be in a better position to deal with the rest of America and the world.
Mayor Richard Hatcher of Gary, Indiana says that means keeping money in what he calls a black common market.
Black people spend in excess of $150 billion a year. The problem is those funds do not spend very much time in the black community. Black entrepreneurs, black business people have been excluded up to this point. They have not had the opportunity to participate in major contracts, not had the opportunity to use their skills and their talents. And what the black mayors are simply doing is saying, we want to give you the same opportunity that your white colleagues have had all the time.
One mayor calls it a significant redirection of the black community, a type of affirmative action already proven to be workable in cities, now being expanded to link those cities to each other. Reporting from Tuskegee, Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Consumers have more money in their pockets. Whether they're spending the extra cash is always another matter. The Labor Department reported yesterday that inflation cooled down in July. Also, personal income rose 1% last month, fueled by higher Social Security payments and tax cuts. But the back-to-school shopping season is the first real test of these economic gains, and it's a test that local department store managers say they passed. Stores like Gaffer's and JCPenney's say the back-to-school business is bigger and better than last year's. But the manager of JCPenney says it's taking more promotional markdowns and aggressive marketing, like adding more name brands to the clothing racks to bring in the customers. Larger stores have that kind of an edge over stores like the Eleanor shop in downtown Montgomery. Still, the manager of Eleanor's reports strong back-to-school sales.
I do. We keep figures for every day, daily, by the week, and by the month. And this year's figures have hit as far back as 78. We've had increases this entire month and all of July.
The 3 weeks before school opens is very important to retailers. Often it's an indication of things to come in the Christmas shopping season. So JCPenney's top management has recently expressed increasing confidence in retail sales and has predicted bigger sales for the second half of 1982. Nationally, economists are more cautious, predicting a rise in third-quarter sales of little more than 1%. And unfortunately, more big income gains are not likely until a year from now. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
If people will come by here and pick up some of our sample ballots and also take a look at the machine and see how to operate the machine, that they will become more aware that there are candidates in other races, and hopefully that will encourage them to become more familiar with the candidates, and therefore that will enable them to make a better decision on voting day.
The Wolverines shocked the favored Vols by jumping on top in the first quarter. Quarterback Ricky Yates connects with halfback Darrell Streeter on a short screen, and Streeter does the rest. He cuts across field, breaks numerous tackles, and races 65 yards into the end zone. A beautiful run. The point after was no good. 6-0 Carver, 8:33 left in the first. But Jeff Davis battles right back. Pop Coley gets loose down the sidelines and rambles 33 yards to put the Vols on the board. With the point after, J.D. led it 7-6. Then on the next play from scrimmage, linebacker Donald Lewis picked off this Yates pass, and it's clear sailing, 20 yards in the touchdown. With the PAT, Jeff Davis, 14, Carver 6. On to the second quarter, and the Vols score again. This time, Coley tiptoeing it in from 5 yards out. The extra point was wide, 20-6, and it looked like a ball run away. But Carver doesn't quit. They drive 98 yards to score right before the half. Yates sneaking it in. The try for 2 is good. It's a 20-14 game at halftime. Defense dominates the second half with the only score coming late in the game. It's on another fine run by Coley. He dashes 51 yards in favor of his third TD of the night. That put it out of reach. Jeff Davis beats Carver in the final, 27-14.
The prime lending rate started dropping a few weeks ago, and the stock market rallied. Some state officials say that could signal life for business in general. The head of the State Department of Industrial Relations, Franklin James, said earlier this week that could mean a break for the state's jobless workers.
You know, it's a real tragedy when you consider that when the rate's up about 14.5%, that means that 1 out of every 7 people is unemployed, can't find a job. But I think with the prime rate coming down, 13.5% recently, if that rate continues at 13.5 or hopefully goes lower, then I think that that's going to impact on the economy in Alabama. And over the next several months, we're going to see some improvement. No boom. We're not expecting a boom in the economy, but some improvement.
Mr. James says some Alabama industries will be affected sooner than others.
When you start talking about new housing starts, considerable planning has to go into all that, and it takes a number of months for it to show up. There are some industries, though, like automotive, in the automobile industry, where I think that if we had a significant lowering of interest rates, we could see almost some immediate improvement. I would say that if we could see the prime rate stay down for 2, 3, 4 months, I think industry would feel comfortable then that they could do some planning for expansion.
Mr. James says business is perhaps understandably cautious about fluctuations in the prime rate and will no doubt wait to see what will happen. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Hey, Dad, did you forget about us?
Or we could have a good fight with Sigmund Brown. You know, something. I didn't do it, I didn't do it.
An estimated crowd of about 500 people braved mid-90-degree heat to protest what they call police brutality by Chickasaw police. Law enforcement officials from various local agencies and the Alabama State Troopers kept a watchful eye on the crowd and onlookers to make sure no serious incidents occurred. 2 minor incidents did occur, however. One when the Sheriff's Department detained what they thought were suspicious-looking people. They confiscated knives, and the men were taken away by Sheriff's deputies. There was no report on whether any charges were filed against them. Another incident took place during the rally across the street from the City Hall. One man, said to be a former member of the Chickasaw Police Department, was spotted by sheriff's deputies with 2 rifles and a revolver in the back of his car. He was taken away to the city jail, but no charges have been filed at this report. Some of the observers thought the rally and march was unnecessary.
They took over Pritchard, one come Chickasaw.
What we're here about, injustice anywhere in Mobile County is a threat to justice everywhere, and that's black and white.
According to the Sheriff's Department, some members of the Klan were in the area, but only passed out literature and posed no problem for them.
Now, I knew that we were winning. I just didn't know that Mr. Teague knew that we were winning.
Mr. Dixon says Barry Teague is trying to get back into the Senate race by having flyers passed out in East Montgomery and placing an ad in a Sunday newspaper that play up some key emotional issues like hidden tax, Alabama Power Company, and Black Caucus support. A paid political advertisement by friends of Barry Teague suggests Dixon met secretly with black political leaders to win an endorsement from the Alabama Democratic Conference.
And I think it's kind of ironic that he would try to attack me by saying I sought the black support when he in fact has the black endorsement.
The most revealing part of the ad and flyer, says Dixon, is a passage that states Montgomery Mayor Emery Fulmer called Dixon a liar at a Chamber of Commerce meeting in February. Dixon says it never happened.
Now, there were over 200 people present at that breakfast, and Mayor Fulmer and I disagreed on an issue, as we have done in the past, but he certainly didn't call me a liar.
Mayor Fulmer, contacted by phone today, says he did question a legislative vote of Dixon's, but he's never called him a liar. Dixon says Teague is just trying to distort reality and
distorting
confuse
facts
the voters.
and presenting things
Teague
that are
could
not
not
true
be reached for comment
as
today.
truth.
Susan Silvernail,
I don't
WSFA,
feel like I'm on the defensive.
TV
I
News.
think I'm receiving a wonderful opportunity.
Benefit in wages and other benefits over a 2-year period. And during these economic times, we feel like that's a very reasonable. Well, the company is prepared to man the system with non-union employees, and we always have to have emergency plans to keep the system operating and supply electricity to people. So we are prepared to man the system and serve the customers with non-union employees should that happen.
Do you know why the contract talks broke down today?
No, we have offered a proposal, a package that includes a 15% benefit in wages and other benefits over 2 years. But as to specific reasons that it was not accepted, I don't know. It's my understanding that the membership has not had an opportunity to vote on this last proposal yet, and will not have an opportunity to vote before they strike tomorrow night.
Great catch out of the third. Field. Atlanta breaks out on top. Jerry Royster, and there's the squeeze back down the third base side. If he beats it, the Braves have a run. Third. Braves take the lead. And Royster proving it. In the fourth, they add 2 more. The first on a single to right by 15 out of 16.
Washington rounds third base. They're waving him on.
Third, Letty scores
no play at the plate. The play's at third base, and Murphy slides in safely. The Braves.
3-1 now. Dave Kingman rips this 2-out
ball,
double
tie
ball
game into the corner.
Zachary and
One is in, and Kingman on his way to second. He'll make it easily.
Rusty Staub then singles.
Headed for left field. Base hit. They're going to wave him. Royster's throw. He bobbles the ball, and the run scores, and the Mets lead.
Too many breaks, and they were committing a lot of errors.
Runner going, high chop, only play. There won't be any play, and Royster's going to wind up at third. Raphael's going to try for second. Now they're waving Royster, and the throw is bad, and he is
icing in the 8th off Tom Hausman. Ramirez again.
That's a base hit, one in. Butler should score easily, and there's 2 big insurance runs. Single is centered by Raffy, and it's now 8-4. That was a big hit
New York has now
to make it a 4-run bulge.